Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Monday, April 24th, 2023. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. And if you're looking for my best bet, you can find those at the premium picks tab at pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the games for Monday in Major League Baseball. First up, it's the Colorado Rockies taking on the Cleveland Guardians. We're going to see Austin Gomber and Cal Quantrill on the mound in this one. Now, there's no doubt that the Guardians last year, and even to start this year, not the best lineup against lefties, but Austin Gomber has struggled both on the road and at Coors Field. He's 0-4 with that 12.12 ERA. It's just really tough to back him in a spot like this against the Guardians team that at the end of the day, they're a very patient lineup. They will get on base via the walk, and they will limit the strikeouts. And, Gomber's had a 9-12 walk-to-strikeout ratio this season. He's given up the long ball. He's given up a lot of sharp contact in his last 5 2/3 innings, giving up 14 earned runs, 7 walks, and 2 home runs against the Pirates and the Mariners. One of those games was on the road. The other one was at home. So, like I said, struggling both away and on at Coors Field. So, Cal Quantrill, we know last year he was a money-making machine for the Guardians, especially pitching at Progressive Field. And, this year he got off to a slow start, but you look at his last start against the Tigers, 6 innings, no earned runs, 4 strikeouts. You'll take that all day from Quantrill. I think he pitches well, good enough here in this spot for the Guardians to grab a win and a run line cover. So give me the Cleveland Guardians. I'm going to lay the 1.5 runs. Next up, it's the Boston Red Sox taking on the Baltimore Orioles. Chris Sale and Dean Kramer are your starters in this one. An interesting game here. I think you can make a case for both sides. You look at Chris Sale and Dean Kramer. I do think Sale is the better starting pitcher, and I do think he'll go on to have the better year overall on the mound. However, the Orioles this season overall have hit lefties well. I mean, they have a high walk rate at 13.3%. Chris Sale's had some issues with his control this year, so that could be a problem for him. We've also seen the Orioles just hit for power, get on base. They're top 4 in baseball in isolated power against lefties. However, the Orioles struggled against the lefty on Sunday, and Eduardo Rodriguez, who had a perfect game deep into that game. So, some interesting things to think about in a game like this. The Red Sox also in a tough travel spot going from Milwaukee to Baltimore, while the Orioles get to stay at home after playing their Camden Yards series against the Tigers. And I do think Sale's a better pitcher, but I do think the Orioles lineup is a little bit more trustworthy. I also think the Orioles bullpen a lot more trustworthy, and the Orioles being at home, getting a pretty good price, I think it's worth a shot. So give me the Baltimore Orioles. I'm gonna lean towards them on the money line. Next up, it's the Houston Astros taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. Jose Urquidy and Taj Bradley are your starters. I've liked what I've seen from Bradley in his first few starts this year. He pitched pretty well against the Red Sox in his first outing, 5 innings, only 3 earned runs, and 8 strikeouts. That's the big thing for me, is he was missing a lot of bats. He only gave up 1 walk in that game and no home runs to go with it. Then you look at his second start against the Reds at Great American Ballpark. We know one of the more hitter-friendly parks in baseball. He goes 5 1/3 innings. He had 9 strikeouts, only 1 walk again, and no home runs again in that game. Now, I know he had a lot of run support in a game like that, but I could see him getting some run support in this game against Jose Urquidy, who, he's got a good ERA on paper, 3.66, but the strikeout number's still not there. 17 Ks in 19 2/3 innings. The walks have been a little bit of a problem. 4 home runs allowed this season. Definitely coming off his worst start of the year, in my opinion. 4 1/3 against the Blue Jays, 7 hits, 4 earned runs, 2 homers. And the Rays, they've crushed righties this year. They're number 1 in baseball in isolated power. They're number 1 in baseball in team OPS. And their strikeout rate at 20.7%, one of the lowest in the league. While the Houston Astros, the same cannot be said about this team. They've had inconsistent numbers against righties so far, improving a little bit, but still outside the top 15 in team OPS, outside the top 25 in isolated power. Their strikeout rate's up from last year against righties. I do think that Bradley could be in a better position. I think he could be the better starter right now. And I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Rays, the better team, at home on the money line. Next up is the Texas Rangers taking on the Cincinnati Reds. Nathan Eovaldi and Nick Lodolo are your starters in this one. Definitely Nick Lodolo has struggled in his last 2 starts. He's given up 20 base hits in his last 9 2/3 innings. And it's not like all those were infield singles. He gave up 4 home runs in that stretch as well. Still, he's got 10 strikeouts, so he's still missing some bats here and there. But, I do think when you look at those games against the Phillies and the Rays, 2 teams hit lefties very well overall this year. The Rays are number 2 in baseball in team OPS and number 1 in isolated power against left-handed pitching. The Phillies, not as strong, but still right up there, number 9 in the league in isolated power, number 10 in baseball in team OPS. So, 2 top 10 offenses, you could argue, or you definitely make the case as being top 10 against lefties this year. Texas Rangers, not so much. You look at their numbers. Team OPS, they're ranked 25th in the league against lefties. Isolated power numbers are ranked 24th in the league. Their strikeout rates in the top half of the league in terms of the highest strikeout rates. So this could be a decent matchup, a good spot for a bounce back outing for Lodolo. And I do think his offense is going to give him some run support early on against Nathan Eovaldi, who's had issues giving up the long ball, giving up sharp contact. And I watched his last game against the Kansas City Royals, and I got to say, I wasn't that impressed. Even though his final line was 6 innings and only 2 earned runs, and he had 5 strikeouts, he had a good amount of base hits, and he was missing a lot of pitches inside the zone, which you don't want to do at a stadium like Great American Ballpark. So I do think the Reds' bats are competitive here. I think Nick Lodolo can bounce back. I'm going to take the Cincinnati Reds on the money line. Next up is the Chicago White Sox taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. Lance Lynn and Chris Bassett are your starters. At the beginning of the season, we saw Chris Bassett have one of the worst performances out of any starting pitcher in baseball in his first start of the year with his new team. He went 3 1/3, 10 base hits, and 9 earned runs, 4 home runs in that game, didn't earn a single strikeout. And because of that, his ERA was lopsided on paper, and it's continued. I mean, it's still high at 5.4, but it's not really been the same Chris Bassett in his last 3 starts. He's been really sharp in those games. He's gone 6 innings in each of his last 3, giving a quality start in all 3 of those. He's missed some bats. He's had some issues with his control, giving up the walks here and there, but only 1 home run in his last 18 1/3 innings of work. His last start against the Houston Astros, 6 1/3, no earned runs, and it was a 4-2 Blue Jays win. I think the offense is going to back him up here. Lance Lynn, not somebody I can trust right now. An ERA above 7. It's another start. Last time out against the Phillies, 5 1/3, 10 base hits, 5 earned runs. The Toronto Blue Jays have hit righties a lot better than lefties this season, and I think they get the Lynn early and often. So give me the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm going to take the Blue Jays to lay the 1.5 runs on the run line. Next up, it's the Miami Marlins taking on the Atlanta Braves. Edward Cabrera and Spencer Strider are your starters. This is a really tough spot to be in for the Marlins. We saw them play a doubleheader against the Guardians this weekend, and just pretty much a grueling series against Cleveland. Now have to go to Atlanta and continue this road trip and face Spencer Strider, who's just razor sharp to start the year. 2-0 with a 2.45 ERA, 36 strikeouts in 22 innings, and only 1 home run allowed. So limiting that sharp contact, missing those bats along the way. This is a Marlins offense that's been inconsistent. We know they have some great hitters in the lineup like Luis Arraez, but overall, the run scoring department, not the best team in baseball, so I do think they struggle here offensively. And Edward Cabrera, he's been sharp in his last couple of starts, but we also know that he's given up basically a walk per inning almost, 16 walks and 17 2/3. So he's got good strikeout stuff, but he also can lose his control at times. And against the Atlanta Braves, a very strong lineup, that could be dangerous. I do think the Braves have the much better bullpen lineup, and they're playing at home here, so I'm going to take the Atlanta Braves and lay the 1.5 runs in this spot. Next up is the Detroit Tigers taking on the Milwaukee Brewers. We're going to see Matthew Boyd and Colin Ray on the mound in this one. When I look at this series and I look at the projected starting pitchers in this series, I think this is the game that the Tigers have the best chance of competing in, maybe even winning outright, but at least covering the run line. And Matthew Boyd's a lefty, doesn't have the best walks per 9 or strikeouts per 9 numbers to start the year, but he's only given up 1 home run in his first 14 innings, so he's limiting sharp contact, and he's facing a Brewers team that we saw him struggle last year against lefties, and we're seeing them struggle again this year against those southpaws. We've seen right now Team OPS ranked 29th in baseball, the Brewers are. In isolated power, the Brewers are not much better, ranked 26th in the league. Their walk percentage is around league average, a little bit below league average, honestly. And their strikeout percentage is the highest in the league, 32% for Milwaukee this season against lefties. So tough to take him at a price like this with a pitcher in Colin Ray that still hasn't had a lot of work this year, and he's got some concerning numbers. 10 2/3 innings, only earning 8 strikeouts, 3 walks to go with it. His last start was not the best against the Mariners. 5 innings, 5 hits, 4 earned runs, 2 walks, and only 2 strikeouts in that game. So the Tigers don't have a great lineup. We know that. One of the worst offenses, if not the worst offense in the American League this season. But this is a good matchup for them, and I do think they could do enough to cover the run line on the road. So give me the 1.5 runs with Detroit as the road dogs. Next up, we see the New York Yankees taking on the Minnesota Twins. We're going to see Johnny Brito and Sonny Gray on the mound in this one. I don't really trust either of these starting pitching options, so I'm just going to take the over in this game. We got 2 pretty good lineups, especially for the road team. But, Johnny Brito, at one point, we saw him give up 7 earned runs in the first inning of a game against the Angels this season. Now, that was at Yankee Stadium, obviously a much more hitter-friendly ballpark. But, Sonny Gray, we saw him in his last start to give up 7 base hits against the Boston Red Sox. So, he's had a good start this year, obviously, a .82 ERA. Giving up a lot of base runners in your last game, a little bit concerning now when you're facing the New York Yankees. And like I said, we've seen Brito's struggles. We see both of these lineups playing pretty well this year. I think we see some scoring in this game. So give me the over in the Yankees-Twins. Next up, we see the Oakland Athletics taking on the Los Angeles Angels. Ken Waldichuk and Jose Suarez are your starters in this game. I like the over in this game. And actually, we're going to be looking at some totals in the last few games for the night in Major League Baseball. I like the over in this one because you got an Angels lineup that crushes lefties. We see them as number 5 in baseball in team OPS against southpaws, number 10 in isolated power. And you look at the Oakland Athletics, obviously not a great lineup, but a team that definitely prefers to play against lefties and righties. Their isolated power numbers aren't the best, but their team OPS is inside the top 20 in baseball. And their strikeout rate's actually not too shabby. 21.4% is the 12th lowest in the league. So, I do think Oakland could put together some good at-bats against Jose Suarez, who's got a 9.26 ERA. We saw him in his last start go 3 1/3 of 2-run ball against the Yankees. He only had 1 strikeout in that game, and the reason why he was only able to go 3 1/3 innings is he gave up 6 walks in that one. So his control's been off. He's not really missing a lot of bats. He can give up sharp contact from time to time. Ken Waldichuk, a 7.65 ERA, not much better. Definitely coming off one of his best starts of the season against the Cubs last time out, but even if he pitches well, do we trust this Oakland A's bullpen? I don't think so. So I'm going to give up 18 runs the other day to the Rangers. So give me the over in Oakland, Los Angeles. Next up, it's the Kansas City Royals taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. Brad Keller and Tommy Henry are your starters. I like another over here. We see another steep total in this game, and for good reason. You got Brad Keller, who is traditionally a good starter for the Royals, in terms of starting the season strong, but then starts to fade off a little bit. And we've seen it, last start against the Rangers. He only went 4 innings because he walked 5 batters. He only had 2 strikeouts in that game. He gave up 3 base hits and 3 earned runs, and that was a 12-2 Royals loss in the end. So the bullpen, obviously, for Kansas City, not too sharp. On the other side, Tommy Henry making his season debut, and while I do think he'll go on to have a solid career with Arizona, he struggled in AAA, and you're facing a Royals team that hits lefties better than righties. They're a Royals team that, although they're not a great run-scoring team and they've struggled with runners in scoring position, they're also a team that's ranked right now 3rd in baseball in hard hit percentage and 6th in the league in exit velocity. For a guy like Tommy Henry who's had issues giving up the home run ball, this could be a tough spot to be in for your season debut for Arizona. So give me the over here in Kansas City, Arizona. And the final game for Monday's card in Major League Baseball, it's the St. Louis Cardinals and the San Francisco Giants. We're going to see Jordan Montgomery and Alex Cobb on the mound in this one. Now, I like the under in this game. The Giants have struggled against lefties this year. Jordan Montgomery coming off a rough start, but I do think he'll bounce back in a really favorable matchup. And Alex Cobb, 2.79 ERA. We saw him pitch really well at Oracle Park last season. Cardinals, on a tough West Coast trip, I do think their offense could struggle in this game a little bit, but I still think in the end, St. Louis, the better team, the better bullpen, the better lineup, and I do think they'll be able to grab the W in the end. So, not a bad price on the money line with St. Louis. So I'll take St. Louis on the money line and take the under to end the night. And that's it. Those are the games for Monday in baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bet, you can find those at Pickdawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.